Yeah, can sing because what time is it?
Okay, I'm gonna start recording now. So we are doing chapter 8, which is routing. I'm going to be the driver, and Asanda is going to be the navigator. So far we have covered displaying components in a single view. But if we have multiple views that a user needs to navigate from one to the next, we have to explore routers that provide screen navigation in our React single page application. So the React router library interprets a browser URL as an instruction to navigate to a client generated view. So React doesn't come with a standard router. React router is a routing solution created by engineer Michael Jackson. So we can bind the router to links on a page, and it will navigate to the appropriate application view when the user clicks a link. So in this chapter, we'll extend our project from chapter 7 to add routing to navigate between home, GitHub, and not found components. So the first thing that we're going to do is install our React routing DOM. So the first step to building the single page application is to install that library by executing the command below. So to set up our routes, we after installing our React router DOM library, we need to define our routes. So each route is an endpoint that can be entered into the browser's location bar. When a route is requested, we can render the appropriate content, right? So this is what our app.js will look like, right? We are going to import React, obviously GitHub, and also our browser routes, route and switch also, right? So in our app, right, we will render a header component, right? As you can see here, our header component contains browser router, switch, and root. These are imported from the React Router DOM library, which provide the essential routing functionalities. Then in our definition, we have specified three components: GitHub component, home component, and not found component. Right, to make it easier to illustrate, we define home component and not found component in app.js instead of in their own separate files. Right, so an additional measure that we can do to avoid showing more than one component is to wrap our routes with the switch component, right? So the switch component only displays the first route that matches. This assures that only one of those routes will be rendered. And with our navigation bar links having defined and configured our routes in header component, we can now add our navigation links to home and GitHub component in app.js by adding the below code. So firstly, we import nav and navbar from React Bootstrap, and then after that we are going to go to our browser router, right? And then that's where we're going to add this navbar, right? This block of code here, and we provide two navigation items in the navbar with our two nav items. So React router will navigate the user to the target route specified by finding the route definition with that name. It will then create an instance of the component and render it. And if we try a non-existent route, we get a not found page because we have earlier declared the wildcard path to direct to not found component. So if we run our app now, we will get a view like this. So let me see. As you can see, that's what we get, right? So if we navigate to GitHub, we'll find a view that looks like this also. And then when you try to enter in an unspecified URL, you will get a not found component rendered like this, right? So we'll in our header, right, we are going to import the additional component and add the new path under switch as shown below. As you can see here, we yeah, there it is here. So we add a route that takes in two parameters as shown below. As you can see here, we have GitHub/user, and we have an ID, right, and then the component also, right? And then we are going to add a route with this route, whenever we navigate to a URL, for example, if we have this one here, user slash Greg, React will render the GitHub user component with the parameter login, Greg, and ID 45. And in the template of github.js, there's github.js, we are going to change this line right here, and we're going to add that nav link, right? And with this nav link, when we add it to the user image of each search result, when one clicks the when you click the user image, you'll be routed to GitHub user component with parameters login and ID. And note that ES6 allows us to use backticks to bind our root parameters into the root path. So to retrieve root parameters, we have to create a GitHub user component that shows the details of a particular user. So in our case, we will just show the login and ID of the user. So we have to create and fill in a GitHub user.js, right? And there is our GitHub user.js here, and it's going to have the following code right here. And in the render method, we display login and ID by getting the root parameters using these two lines of code right here. As you can see, we have our user login, user ID. Then this .props.match.params is an object that holds all the values passed through parameters, right? So when we run our app, right, we can click on one of the GitHub search results, then we will be brought to the GitHub user component, which will show us the login and ID details of that GitHub user. So if we want to redirect a user to another page upon clicking a button or upon clicking submit in a form, in such a case, we cannot use the nav link directive. Instead, we will need to talk to the React router directly, and this is what we call programmatic navigation, right? So our GitHub user.js will illustrate this, and the first thing we do is to import the button right from React Bootstrap, and then we're gonna add this handle click, this prop history push, and we're going to have our GitHub users go to GitHub users button, and we do event binding to bind it to the handle click method, right? So in the handle click method, we call the push method of this .props.history, which takes in the name of the target route, and when the user clicks on the button, the new route is pushed onto the history object, pushing the route into history, which will cause the navigation to occur. So in summary, in this chapter, we learned how to build single page apps with routing. We learned how to define, configure, and render requested components using the root component, and we also learned about providing route links, how to create routes with parameters, and how to retrieve the parameters. I was the driver, Asanda was my navigator. Thank you.